There we go. I got them both to working now. So if I don't say your name in the comments or anything, please forgive me. But like I said, I'm recording on here and for YouTube both, and so I'm just I don't want to put everybody's name out there. So I'm going to give this a few more minutes, or a couple of more minutes anyway, and just kind of let a few other people pop on here. So. There we go. Actually, I do have a question, not pertaining to tonight necessarily. Just to see, I'm going through a Bible reading plan, and I found it kind of interesting going and reading through this. Or actually, today I was listening to, because I did a lot of driving today. But one part kind of got me because I'd never thought about it before. But in the 17 books of the prophets in the Old Testament, and of course we know there was other prophets that were spoken about in the first part of the Old Testament, but within just the 17 prophets, books of the prophets, there was something that was said that kind of made me think of a question with a kind of a multiple choice answer. So the question is what servant of God out of those that was mentioned in the books of the prophets claimed that he was not a prophet and that he was only a farmer? And the multiple choice I kind of thought about was Elijah, Ezekiel, or Amos. And try not to Google it if you can right now. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes and let y'all kind of think about that and see if somebody wants to try to answer it. I actually found the answer to that very interesting in a way, just simply because I had never thought about the answer, what some of the servants actually said. So, and I'm doing pretty well. Feeling a little bit better tonight than I did the other night whenever I did that video. So, been having to work on our house because, unfortunately, the very, very cold temperatures we had last week. Actually, the first of this week, actually, I take that back. That was the first of this week. It got down to about 10 degrees the other morning. And unfortunately, one small pipe on one end of our house ended up busting. And I finally got that fixed today. Tried to fix it yesterday and it didn't work, so I had to go back and fix it again today. So, but I got that taken care of. So, and you are right for the first person that gave an answer to that. It actually was Amos. As he was giving a prophecy, the king that he was giving the prophecy to actually looked at him and said, who are you to come and prophesy to me? And he said, well, I'm not even a prophet. I'm not even a son of a prophet. He said, I'm really nobody. He said, I'm just a farmer. And he said, but God sent me here to prophesy. So I just thought that one was kind of interesting because I hadn't really thought about that before. Just a second. It was silencing my phone. So, but yeah, it was actually Amos. he was one. He was the one that actually did not claim to be a prophet at all. So, excuse me. Hang on, guys. There. Oh God, go ahead and turn that on because it's the Dell on my tablet. The screen on my tablet is a little bit too dark without that light on. So I apologize. I hope that sitting back or something like that won't cause bigger problems. So, like I said, I'm just giving it a couple of minutes here for some people to jump on, and those who are that tagged into this, just let them come on too. Okay. So. And there's some things I wrote about the subject I'm going to kind of talk about tonight. A few years back, I'm going to go back to find them and repost them into the group because it's been a while since they were posted there. And they're just things that I wrote off of my experience and some of the things I learned through that. So. But I just want to encourage everybody, if you haven't started a Bible reading plan, I'd encourage you to. They are really good to go through. So, give me just a second. Alright, making sure everything was plugged up right. But no, if you haven't started a reading plan, I would encourage you to. They're really good to go through. They're fun to go through in a lot of ways, especially if you go through them and again. Every year you just reread through the Bible. A lot of different things get opened up to you, and especially to your sight and things you didn't think about before. So, but anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get started here. It's about 10 after right now, so I'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and get started with a word of prayer real quick. Lord Father, just thank you for this time, and thank you for this opportunity to come together and just to fellowship and just to have this opportunity. Father, just ask for your blessing upon what we talk about tonight and the things that we go over. Lord, may you direct all things, and may these be your words. May this be what you want said. How you want it said, Lord. Just ask for your blessing upon each person here. Especially that are watching and those who will watch afterwards or come in during it. So, again, we just thank you and praise you, God. It's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. The other day, what really sparked all this, the other day, I'd read something. It was, I believe, in a comment about limerence. Now, limerence is a funny thing. It really is. A lot of people have different ideas about it. Some believe it's all psychological and all, but in all truth, it's not just psychological. It really isn't. It's emotional. It's physical. It's it plays with people's thinking in a lot of ways. I say all this because limerence can work in different ways for different people at different times. The enemy can have just as much manipulation and power with the aspect of limerence as God can. So, I'm going to give you some right, multifaceted. I'm going to give you some definitions here, and there's the ones I looked up. I'm hoping my coffee mixture here kicks in pretty quick. Limerence. It is a state of being infatuated or even obsessed with another person, typically involuntarily wanting the reciprocation of those feelings from another person, but not primarily for a sexual relationship. Basically, well, let's stop right there. That's kind of one of those, you know, technical type of definitions for it. I kind of edited down part of it a little bit, but basically that's what the technical definition of it is. You know, the state of being infatuated, or even possibly obsessed with another person. It is involuntary. You know, it's not something that I believe we all just we don't really always just go out to and hope to fall in love with somebody. And really, that's what this limerence is. It's just the state of that first feeling of falling in love with somebody. Man, you get those butterflies in your stomach. You get that funny feeling. You start to look at them differently. You know, if it's somebody that you've known for a while, all of a sudden they look way different than what you're used to seeing them as. And so you have that. You have that infatuation with a person. Basically, you know, this is seeing somebody, and especially if it's somebody, like I said, that you've known for a while, that you're talking to, or that you just started talking to, and find out you have all these little things in common, and go out and do something together, and start feeling even funnier, and start having even more fluttery type feelings. And that's what this is. It's not regulated to prodigals. As I can almost bet any of us here can say that how we met our spouse, we fell in love with them pretty quickly at times. My wife, I actually I didn't know her, but I'd seen her a few different times, and I recognized her by, to be honest with you, her hair and the jacket that I'd seen her wear. And where we met, you know, wasn't exactly the greatest place in the world, but we met and we got, you know, and it was one of those, I started feeling those feelings, and it was something different. And the next time I saw her, she had that jacket on that I recognized, and I just looked at her. I was like, "So you're that person? I've seen you, and I've just kind of looked at you, and I always wondered about something about you." And I fell in love with her. And there's people out there who fall in love with somebody very quickly. I'm not going to say that limerence is something that happens necessarily in the exact same way to everybody, but that feeling happens. Now, how that feeling takes place, a lot of it depends on where you're at in your life. If you're single and you're hoping that you can find somebody that you can love and that will love you back, and you start feeling that for somebody and you fall in love with them and they seem to fall in love with you and everything starts working out, that's great. And excuse me, and that falling in love can lead to something more, something bigger. And I don't know why I start yawning every time I do this. But anyway. Hang on just a second. And so that's what that limerence is. It's falling in love. And like I said, if you're single, and that could work out great. But then that falling in love, it doesn't. It's not romantic love. This is, like I said, infatuation. It's more fleshly. It's more selfishly to some degree, because you want to be around that person all the time. You want to be close to them. Sometimes you think that you're going to, I can sacrifice days at work if I can just get to have that day with that person. And so you start trying to do that. You start putting off time with friends or family to spend time with this person. They become the object of your attention. And you hope that you become the object of their attention. And that's what that is. But then limerence, that falling in love, should progress. It should progress to the fact that you fall out of that love and into real, true love. You fall into that romantic part. You get walking in that romantic part, and into that filial love, that eros love, that agape love. That's where that falling in love should lead to. But it doesn't always. Sometimes that infatuation starts to die off for one person or the other, and the relationship doesn't last, and it doesn't work. And the next thing you know, the two people grow apart, or one person grows apart, and the relationships get broken apart. Usually that does mean one person gets hurt. Simply because that's not always do both people grow that far apart. One person usually is trying to hang on. So, but that's what happens with that. It either you fall out of that love, and or you just fall away completely. And so that's really what this limerence part is. And like I said, I can guarantee almost any of us can say, well, when I first saw my spouse, or after the first date, or after the second or third date, or after I ended up getting to meet her parents, they have that, what we would call a limerence feeling beginning. But what happens is, like it said, it's an infatuation, and it can even become a bad obsession. But also, it's another part of it is there was another part here. I'm having to kind of read over my notes here. But limerence is also a part of that selfishness, like I said. It's a part of that, we want. Because we feel it, we want what we want out of it. Which usually clashes with the other person because they want what they want out of it. Like I said, it's not really necessarily romantic love. So the feeling, like I said, of butterflies and desires of showing attention to get and to keep the other person's attention. That's really what that part is. I'm sorry. I hope it's not on my end. That is weird. I hope... Is it cutting out on my end as you're watching? Is that what the problem is? Let me try to do something here. I'm going to see how that'll work. I turned off the Wi-Fi for right now. I'm going to see how just the internet to the phone is working. If it keeps giving problems, then I might have to stop and restart. So I'd hate to do that, but let me know if it starts getting better. Okay. Yeah, actually, videos on YouTube or on Facebook have been doing that lately. I've noticed a lot of them have actually been doing that lately. Yeah, I'm really starting to think it's Facebook in some ways, because I've noticed a few other people's videos being like that. Well, thank goodness I'm not in a lip sync contest. Otherwise, I'd lose. Anyway, hopefully, some of y'all chuckled at that. Just think of it as a really weird Chinese infomercial movie. Anyway. But really, and so the biggest problem with all of this is that can get started for people. One of the things, Robert, I know I'm way off. Oh, you meant the video. Okay, my bad. Anyway, that one should have been funny. But anyway, the main part really that hurts a lot of people with this is, like I said, it's a part of the selfishness. It's a part of needing and wanting attention. And so when that relationship becomes harder, life gets in the way. That's what I was talking about. Just think of it as one of those weird Chinese infomercial movies. I'm not as handsome as Bruce Lee, but I'm more like Bruised Lee. But anyway, now that would be a weird Chinese movie. Anyway, but it's all of a sudden when life starts getting in the way and people start having problems. Try to turn the Wi-Fi back on. Maybe that'll make a difference. Maybe I'll get caught up. I doubt it. Who knows? Okay. Let me carry on here. Try to carry on. Whenever life starts getting in the way in the middle of the marriage, kids, trying to make sure everything's taken care of the right way and all, next thing you know, you have somebody that says, well, I'm not getting enough attention. I'm not getting enough of what I believe I need. And then the next thing you know, they start... I just posted something in the group and then on my profile page and a couple other places. It said, an affair never starts in the bedroom, it starts with conversation. Dang it.
The baby's in the sitting room?
No, I think they're under my desk.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Just not wanting to work.
Oh.
Okay. Hopefully this will start again. I ended up having to turn the Wi-Fi back off, so. Because I'm guessing the Wi-Fi was one of the main problems. But anyway, and so one person in the marriage decides that they're not getting enough attention, they're not getting this, not getting that. Maybe they've been hurt too many times. maybe the husband has said one too many times that he's going to do whatever he wants to do, and ends up having issues happen and different stuff. You're fine. You're fine. And so that person, the husband goes off because he wants that female attention, and he starts talking to somebody he works with, or starts talking to this person or that person, or somebody he happens to know, and it starts getting carried to the wrong part, to the wrong way. It starts getting carried to, those what I used to call adult jokes, and and harmless innuendos and things like that. Well, the problem is that those things carry weight when they're passed between two people. And the guy thinks that, maybe if I start showing this person the right kind of attention, then maybe she'll reciprocate, and I can see where things go from there, and maybe I can actually find a way to be happy. The wife who either does not get enough attention from her husband, or has been hurt over and over by her husband, who has a husband that's been a prodigal spouse, and he just didn't realize it. They weren't in a place of having to stand with God, but then they were still in a place of having to just have a lot of hurt and pain going on. And she decides that, she wants to be happy. She's supposed to be happy. And so she starts talking to somebody, or she thinks, I'm just going to go out and find, or I'm just going to go out with the girls one night, and a man pays a little bit more attention to her than what she's used to, or way a lot of attention to her. And that causes issues. And then those feelings come in. And instead of it being a good falling, or a good limerence, to some effect, that can create a good relationship, now you have a limerence that creates a relationship that is tearing apart another one. And so you have that whole limerence happening with a prodigal spouse, because they're seeking something of their own. They're seeking selfishness. They're seeking how to get attention. Well, that's one way to put it, definitely. And I'm not saying names right now because I'm recording on YouTube also. So, but that's a part of it. And because really, for me, in my time of learning all this, and I always say that God gives us hindsight, 20/20 hindsight. It was always, as I love how Solomon puts it, that it's futile and it's meaningless. It's chasing after wind. It's doing something it's trying to go after something that you can never actually ever truly have. Hey there. I'm not saying names because I'm on YouTube also, so I don't want to have the names repeated on there. But anyway, it's that part there that why I believe whenever somebody enters into a bad place of limerence with somebody else, it's very fleeting. It's very futile, simply because they're looking for selfishness. They're looking for their desires to be met. They're looking for that attention. They're wanting that attention that much worse. The problem is, so is the other person. The other person's in that really for themselves also. There's no real truth to any of it. one thing whenever I was reading, there was an article done by a Dorothy Tinov, I believe. And this was way back. This was quite a few years back that she did this. But, a lot of people ask, how long does this last? How long does limerence last? I'm going to tell you this. I don't believe there is a true time boundary, a true timetable for this, simply because when a person is in that kind of a bad limerence like that, if things start cooling off, if things start going a different direction, when the attention stops being so good, then the enemy, the devil, knows how to manipulate. He knows how to, fan that fire. He knows how to poke those coals to get that flame kind of started back again. He did that many a times in my life with other people. Getting the conversations going right again, or getting the things that were being done going in the same direction as what they were at one time. But Dorothy Tinov, she said that the estimates that she gave, it can last a few weeks to decades. But many believe the average is 18 months to 3 years. A lot of experts, I guess you want to call them, and there's one that I'm very highly dislike, but anyway, say, yeah, 3 years. 3 years. At 3 years, the devil started everything again for me with the last other person, and kept fanning that flame. And then even after that, started that flame again, and I was right back in the same position. Because in the things that I learned, that bad limerence can do a couple of different things for a person. It can cause them to keep searching over and over again for somebody who will give them the kind of attention they want. Or it can do one of the worst things it can ever be done. Limerence can end up, I said it's an infatuation and can be an obsession, but the wrong limerence can actually cause, as it did in my life, a person to become addicted to another person. I never believed that was possible. But it is. It's truly possible. I became addicted to the second other person. Mainly because she knew what she could do to keep a control over me. To some degrees it's hard to talk about, but then I know, this is why I'm supposed to be doing this. And what we call the prodigal spouse becomes addicted to that attention, becomes addicted to the things that person does, becomes addicted to the things that person allows them to do, becomes addicted to the thoughts and the actions that this other person introduces, and it just gets carried from there. I truly believe when that happens, the level of immorality becomes so great and so sad that that's where the enemy, the devil, gets a hold of a person, especially a prodigal spouse, and he holds them in shame of what they've been doing. And he knows how to feel that, well, if you're already doing it, then you just keep doing that, and if you already feel bad about it, then if you just keep doing it, there's no reason to feel bad anymore. Why feel bad for doing it if it feels that good anyway, and you know how you can find it to do that, so you just keep doing it. Just don't let anybody know, because then you'll really look bad. But if you just keep doing it and then nobody knows about it, you'll be fine. And so the enemy knows how to hold people in shame with this stuff. And in the Bible, I was kind of researching some of this. In the Bible, it's hard to look at where this really comes in at, to some degree. We can look at it with people's lives in Scripture. One of the first ones I look at is Jacob and Rachel. Jacob loved Rachel. He had fell in love with her to the point to where he was willing to work 7 years to have her. But he fell in love. In falling in love, he was willing to do whatever. And of course, in those times, if that happened, then you were actually working for something, and that's what happened with him. But then the problem is that he couldn't see God's plan, because God's plan was Leah. But then God went ahead and gave him Rachel, allowed it anyway. But that was kind of one of them. Another one was, into some aspects, Judah and Tamar in Genesis 38. Judah just had this selfish need they wanted to take care of. And because this woman that he believed was one thing gave him the attention that he wanted, he believed he got what he wanted, and he was willing to fulfill what he had said he was going to do. But then, God still used it, oddly enough, in some aspects that we would look at. But it was definitely something that we could say was not real true love. It was not anything really that we would probably call romantic, but it was more of a, I see this person and that's what I want. And so kind of more of a bad Limerence type of example there. But then we have David and Bathsheba. And when we go to 1 Kings, we begin reading this story. David sees her, and he's immediately infatuated with her. He's so infatuated with her that he gets one of his guys to go and get her. He has fell into a limerence with Bathsheba to the point to where he has to have her. And that's where that part goes wrong in some aspects. And again, God used it, but it gives you a bad example or it gives you an example of how bad limerence works. It wasn't a good situation. It wasn't something that should have happened. And I think the last one that I really looked at, this is 2 Samuel. 14, I believe. No, I'm sorry. 7. 2 Samuel 7. This is Amnon and Tamar. Tamar was one of David's daughters. She would have been a half-sister to Amnon. And Amnon was in limerence with her. He was in love with her. Not a true romantic love. He was in an infatuation and obsession with this girl. But it was a bad one. It was a bad direction with it. Because he turned around, and once he had what he wanted from her, he didn't want to have anything else to do with her. And so that's, for me, whenever I was thinking about this and writing a lot of stuff down and coming across a lot of this, and I was like, That's where we can see that. But then we have Isaac and Rebekah. And now we're talking about also during this time, this was the time of explicit betrothal. You weren't going to get away you weren't going to have a relationship without having, or a true marriage without having the betrothal period, which was 1 year, no less than 1 year. So for 1 year, people were legally, quote unquote, legally married, but they weren't bound in marriage yet. They were simply legally married because of a contract that was signed between the father of the bride and the groom himself. And so there was no actual binding of the marriage. But then, and so Abraham sends his men off to his homeland to find Isaac a wife, and what happens that, the servant prays to God. He said, show me who I'm supposed to take back. And God shows him Rebekah. And so, the servant talks to the parents, and they say, well, we're not sure. And they finally ask her, and she says, yes, I will go. She already had that faith in God. And so it's expected, it's believed, let me say it that way, it's believed, that it took them 1 year to get from where Abraham came from back to where Abraham was at. It took him several months to get to where they were, and then several more months to get back. And so it's believed that it took at least a year. Because it doesn't say that, there was a time period of Isaac and Rebekah getting to know each other or anything like that. As soon as they got back to that area, and Rebekah saw Isaac, and Isaac saw Rebekah, well then, Isaac immediately fell in love with her. He fell into that limerence, that good limerence, with Rebekah. And he immediately bound her as his wife, and bound himself to her as her husband. And so that's kind of one of those good examples. That we see. Joseph and Mary is actually another good one. Joseph had fallen in love with Mary. He knew he wanted to marry her. He knew he wanted her to be his wife forever. And actually we see that he actually had great concern for her. Because when he realized that she was pregnant, and he knew it wasn't his, he said, I'm going to have to send her away so that, one, she doesn't get hurt, she doesn't get shamed, she doesn't get anything bad happen to her. But also it doesn't come back on me, because it's going to look like I did something terribly wrong when I didn't. And so, which he was right, he had to protect his own reputation to some extent, but he had so much concern for her that he wanted to protect her also. And so that was another good part of, falling in love with somebody and then it becoming a true thing and a real thing. And so even Joseph and Mary can be a good example. But for me, limerence is truly the first step of people coming together as far as a man and woman are. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way the Bible has made it. And so that's the way it is. For me, anyway. And so, but then you have to get past that. And you either go into the direction of falling out of that love and stepping into a walk of true, real, full aspect of love. Not a noun, but a verb. Active and living love. That it is your philios love, your brotherly love for each other, your eros love, your intimate romantic love for each other, and then having that agape love that for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, for sickness and health. And yes, thank you for that. Ruth and Boaz is another great example of that good limerence. Because Ruth was this, complete total alien into the land, and yet Boaz fell in love with her. He fell in love with her so much that he was willing to risk him getting to be with her and make her his wife by bringing up to the actual redeeming kinsman to say, you're supposed to redeem all of this, but you also have to take Naomi and Ruth, and you have to marry Ruth. And that's when this, I can't marry her. She's an alien. She's not from us. I can't do that. My other wife is going to get mad if I do that. And that's a whole different story going into other wives. But anyway, there's a whole actual reason behind that. But anyway, it's different time, different story. But, and so that's why Boaz said, well, I will take her. I will redeem everything. And I will even redeem them. And I will take Ruth as my wife. And there's actually another part to that I can kind of talk about some other time, but it's something that God showed me on a totally different subject, but that has to do with Ruth. But anyway, or the story of Ruth. But that's but those are good examples. But they allowed themselves to fall in love. They've involuntarily fell in love. But then they took that and they stepped into the walking pattern, that walking path of love, to say that, it doesn't matter. I'm going to love this person no matter what. But then you have the bad side of it. Gomer is a bad side of it. She was very selfish about what she wanted. There was other women that were very selfish about what they wanted. They didn't want actual love. They just wanted to make sure that they had control of something. They had control of a person. They had control of a situation. And so I believe a lot of women with men in this, women with men, prodigals, women I believe use that what we would call limerence, that feeling of falling in love, and they know that this guy is falling in love with them, and they can control things, and they can have a good stance over this person to say that they get what they want. Women prodigals, on the other hand, they're hoping to find somebody who will love them back in the way that they're wanting, in the way they feel like they've been missing. And really it turns into great hurt for them a lot of times. So, because, men and women are not alike on any part, on mostly any part of how they do things. So, but, that's really where all this comes in at. There's good parts to it, and there's a lot of bad parts to it. The good parts should lead into even greater parts. The good parts should lead into true and real parts. Like I said at the beginning of this, I can almost bet any of us here, any of us watching this, could raise our hand if somebody said, did you fall in love with your spouse before you married him? And that's kind of why you wanted to marry him, because you fell in love with them. And so when somebody said, well, it's an evil spirit, it can seem like that. I'm not going to say it is necessarily, because we've all experienced it. We've all lived through it. All of us kind of lived through that feeling of limerence, that feeling of love, of new, exciting, different love, or infatuation, more than anything, not necessarily love. We call it love just simply because it sounds better than infatuation. We don't think of, oh man, I felt into infatuation with this person. We don't say that. We don't say this person gives me butterflies because I'm so infatuated with them. We don't think like that. And so, for me, I believe that limerence can have good and bad aspects. Like I said, good is stepping into a true walk of living an active love. But the bad is either getting hurt or allowing somebody to have control over us because of that feeling. Living our life thinking that everything will be okay. When in truth, it's very futile, it's very meaningless, it's very temporary. It can be fanned by the flames of lust and wrongful or immoral desires, majority of the time. But people don't see that. They're not going to see it. They don't want to see it. They just want to believe, oh, well, this is a good relationship until there's bad times. And, well, it's just a little bit of bad times. Those will pass. Those will get better. Not realizing that there's a reason why those are bad times. But that's right. Very deceitful. And again, like I said, most people don't realize it. They don't see it. But in a prodigal spouse, yes, limerence is bad. Because it's nothing but selfishness. How long does it last? There's no way to really know, to be honest with you. In a believer's life, it depends on God. In a non-believer's life, in so many ways it can still depend on God. But it also depends on how God is allowing the other person, that non-believer's life to go. Which that's kind of another story for another time at some point. But for me, there's no true definition. There's no true way of knowing exactly how long that limerence can last. As I said, that Tanov, said weeks to decades. That limerence stuff kept lasting for me. Kept getting, die down and then turn back up and die down and turn back up, and but it was all fleeting. It was all very temporary. It was all very fleshly. I believe that's one reason why it's so important in marriage, is to take those times to get away, take those times to just sit and really talk with each other about interests, about different things. Take that time to truly try to reconnect, because that's what's going to help fan the flames in that real true love, that godly love that we're supposed to have for our spouses. Because we don't need to necessarily just fall in love every time, but it does help to have those feelings renewed to some extent. And the reason, and be reminded of the reason why we're in this relationship, that our love is supposed to be active. And not just, infatuation. Because if we believe that we're supposed to live in the infatuated part of love, or the infatuated part of feelings, we're lying to ourselves. Because that part doesn't last. Those are just feelings. Those are just emotions. There's nothing active to them. They burn out. They die off to an extent. They go away. They can change very easily. But that active true love is something totally different. It's not the same at all. I look at me and my wife, and I think, my active love for her is to say that no matter what, I'm going to love her. Not only do I want to love her, but I choose to love her every day. Not only am I wanting to try to do more, even though it seems like nowadays parts of me says no. You've been too rough on yourself. So, but there are a lot of times I want to try to do more, and it's like I feel like I fail way too often. So, but it's that part of wanting to be active, wanting to do things differently and better in so many ways than what to try to keep those good things alive between two people. God has blessed us with the aspect that we have 3 different types of love to get to give. Because really, God only works off of 2 of them. He works off that Philios love, and he works off agape love. But he leaves eros love for us, for his couples that are married, man and woman that are married together. That eros love is for us to use for our spouses. And that's why it's important to try to do what we can. But that means that both people have to maintain a great relationship with God. A real, true relationship with God. And be more than what they have been being in the past. That's the largest part of it. Is working in that relationship. So, I didn't know if anybody might have some questions or anything. And I felt like doing this because, to me, in some aspects, it felt like there was some slight misunderstandings, maybe, or slight differences in what Limerence was. It's not all bad. It's not always all bad. It's bad given the situation and the circumstances. It's bad in how it gets entered into. I had a great aunt, my grandmother's sister. Her first husband died while in the army overseas. And it was a little while after he had passed away and all. And she had met, I guess she kind of known who he was, but she met him one week, and that Saturday they went out on their very first date. And the next Saturday they got married. 7 days. 7 days they got married. And hang on just a second. Trying to get my phone. Sorry, folks. Okay. Sorry, I was just trying to read a message there. Apologize for that. Stuff set back up here. But so their infatuation that became love turned into over 40 years of true active love for each other. No, I don't recommend going and getting married after 7 days. But